This week we're looking at a category and a subset and a powerful command. This is all in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 16. Let's dive in and read it from the ESV. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. We're going to take a look at it in two parts. Let's start out. Teste eupoias kai koinonias me epilanthanaste. All right. So the day, the second word in, but or and, tes eupoias. Notice that eupoias has two iotas in a row, and we have those two little dots, those diacritical marks over the second iota telling us, don't try to turn this into a diphthong. Tes eupoias is in the genitive case, and it means of doing well, well-doing, or doing good. Kai and koinonias is also in the genitive case of sharing. Then we get our verb at the end. And our verb is an imperative here. Epilanthaneste comes from lanthanomai. It's a present deponent imperative second person plural. So what? It's a present tense imperative, so it's a command to keep doing something, but it's got the may in front of it, so it's negated. So it means don't keep doing something. Now, if it was in the aorist tense, if it was an aorist imperative, it would mean stop doing something. But because it's a present tense imperative, it means don't keep doing something. It sort of implies an intentionality, an ongoing nature of the thing that you shouldn't keep doing. What is it that they shouldn't keep doing? They shouldn't keep neglecting or being neglectful. So that's pretty important. The prohibition here in the verse is do not keep being neglectful. And then we go to the front part of the verse, of doing good or of well-doing and of sharing. Pretty important stuff. So there's a great construction in the beginning. It's called a TSKS construction. We have an article, tes, and then we have a substantive, eupoias. Then we have the kai. Then we have another substantive that doesn't have an article, koinonias. And that TSKS construction is usually important to look at in Greek because frequently it's referring to one and the same thing, and sometimes it isn't. The question for us here is tes eupoias kai koinonias referring to one and the same thing, something similar, two separate things? We have to know, we have to figure it out. Here what we have is a category, well-doing or doing good, and a subset of that category, sharing. So if you think about it, doing good or well-doing is an umbrella type category. It's a big picture category. And we could say that sharing is a material subset of that. It's part of well-doing. It's an example of well-doing. It's a more focused, narrow description of well-doing. So well-doing is not limited to sharing, but sharing is an example of it. So it's a subset of the category. Significant stuff. So what is the command? The command is do not be neglectful. Don't keep deliberately neglecting. Neglecting what? Well-doing and sharing. Specifically, sharing as an example of the broader category of well-doing. Now, what letter is this written in? It's written in the letter to the Hebrews. This is the epistle known as Hebrews. So what? Well, this notion of starting out with a broad category and then giving a more narrow example is a major feature of Hebrew poetry. So if you have an audience that are Hebraic thinkers, This is a natural and normal way to communicate. Broad category, then a subset that is more specific. Go back and look at Hebrew poetry in the Psalms, in Ecclesiastes, in Proverbs, in the prophets, where you see it broken out as poetic stanzas. Go back and read that. And what you'll see frequently is an idea stated in a broad category and then sort of repeated in the next line, but with a more narrow focus. And we see that plain as day here in the first half of this verse. Do not continually be deliberately neglectful of doing good or well-doing, and specifically sharing. And that word koinonias, sharing, is always a material sharing. We're not talking about sharing your feelings. We're talking about sharing your resources, food, shelter, clothing, safety, water, things that are going to allow another to continue. Pretty great stuff. Let's move on and look at the last half of the verse. Toiautais gar thusiais euarestetai hotheos. Now this half of the verse is very front-loaded toward the actions that are referenced in the first half of the verse. So let's break it down word by word, but then we have to look at that word order carefully. Toiautais, with such what? Thusiais, sacrifices or offerings, and then in the middle we have the gar. For with such sacrifices or offerings, euarestetai, he, she, or it is well pleased. And who is the he, she, or it? Hotheos, God. So it says, for God is well pleased with such sacrifices or offerings. But look at the word order. The such, followed by the sacrifices and offerings, are front-loaded because that's the subject of the previous half of the verse. The well-doing and the sharing that you should not continually and deliberately be neglectful of are the offerings, such offerings that are well-pleasing to God. Don't neglect those things. Don't put your fingers in your ears and say, la, 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 I don't hear you, or cover your eyes and say, I don't see that. Don't be deliberately neglectful of those things, because those are the kind of things that are well-pleasing to God, says the writer of Hebrews in chapter 13, verse 16. Doing well or doing good broadly, like materially sharing specifically, are the kind of things that the strong command, do not deliberately keep neglecting. Don't be deliberately neglectful of these things. Don't pretend you don't see these needs. Don't pretend you don't see the opportunity to act on these things, because these are the kind of things that are well-pleasing to God, is what the writer of Hebrews says in chapter 13, verse 16. So much packed in such a tiny little verse. Hope it was good for you. If it was, please like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, leave me some feedback in the comments. And until next time, Charis Kairos Humin, grace and peace to you.